And just so you guys know, the thumbnail, it's pretty legit because that's a massive turbo. Oh, I'm dumb. I'm sorry. Now to get back to the real reason we're here, you guys, we're going to be installing our 1500 horsepower fuel system. We're going to be installing the fuel filters, all these AN lines. We got 3 Walbro 450 fuel pumps that we're going to be installing into our radium surge tank today. This is what the video is about. And obviously it's all the miscellaneous stuff with fuel filters, this beautiful G42 turbo that we can just sit here and admire. Now all this wonderful stuff is going to be going into our 97 GSX. Now if you guys haven't seen this already, I got the fuel cell 100% mocked up, more or less bolted in, and we're installing the surge tank right here. So let's go get it ready. Super zone. Alright, so we got to make some room. I don't know if this is going to work, maybe. So if you guys haven't checked out the last video, I highly recommend go seeing it because honestly you probably don't know what this is. But if you don't want to go watch it and you guys are just wondering what this is, but just like a quick thing, our Boss 44 fuel pump is going to be filling up the surge tank 100% of fuel. That way our Walbro 450 fuel pumps never starve of fuel and it never sucks in air. So pretty much the engine will never cavitate of fuel, which is a good thing, and we won't run the risk of running lean. That's cool. Nice. I really like how the Walbro fuel pump sits inside here, guys. So check it out, it's like nice and sturdy in here, and we have a little gap right up in here, but we're gonna go ahead and put some fuel line right there and then hook everything up, and we're almost done with this thing. That's pretty quick. So apparently, I spent the last 20 minutes putting these little fuel lines on, and well, hey, guess what? It comes with fuel lines because these ones do not fit. Go figure. Wow, that comes off like nothing. I legitimately spent about 15-20 minutes putting these fuel lines on when they were right here the whole time. Awesome. Now after some trial and error, this is what we have, guys. The 3 Walbro 450 fuel pumps in this thing looks absolutely beautiful. And we have a level sensor here just in case if the system ever goes dry because there's a fault with something. Now I do got to go over one thing that kind of irritated me about this radium surge kit, guys, and I've been seeing a lot of people complain about this too. So the fittings that are on here, this is a -10 ORB, but they have a -8 on here. All these are -8s, but they have a -6 AN line. That's kind of dumb because we had to buy all new brand new fittings. For example, a -10 ORB to a -10 AN fitting. Also, whenever you're done installing the Walbro 450s, make sure to kind of put the connectors kind of where they're wedged up against this little green bracket. That way they're not bouncing around or in the way of the level sensor and it doesn't get caught going in. Also, whenever you wire, you're going to see a plus and minus here. Just make sure that on each pump assembly that the negative is on the black wire and the positive is on the red wire. Common sense, but just so you guys know. Look how beautiful that screen is. Man, this is looking amazing so far. Now, something really easy to do is to test the system for any internal leaks. Obviously, the hoses that we just installed, we want to make sure it's not leaking internally. So I have my air compressor set up to about 90 PSI, which is about roughly the fuel pressure we're going to be hitting on this vehicle. Now, we're going to want to pressurize the inlet of this and just kind of give it a little bit of air to make sure we don't hear any excessive air coming out of any of the hoses. I don't see or hear any type of air coming from the hoses, so that usually indicates that these pumps are properly installed and it's ready to install in our surge tank. In she goes. Just like that. Next, you're going to want to torque down the bolts to 30 inch-pounds, which isn't very much, so be careful because it is aluminum. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we did swap out these fittings for the -10 AN lines because obviously all of our fuel lines are going to be -10, so it just makes sense for these to be -10 as well. So real fast on our fuel pressure regulator, this is our new return line. This is a -10. The original that I was using was about 1/4 of an inch, which is ridiculously small. You can see the size comparison, which is crazy. Look at that, that's a big old difference. But the orifice inside the fuel pressure regulator might be too tiny inside it. You guys can kind of see the orifice, which is that little tiny check ball right there, which is very, very small, about the same size as the 1/4 inch return line. Might be a problem. Honestly, we'll find out whenever we start it. If we can't drop fuel pressure down to 43.5 PSI with our 3 fuel pumps, then we know that the pressure regulator is an issue, or we just hook up a Hobb switch to the 2 and 3 fuel pump. We won't know until we install it. Our surge tank is going to be mounted here, and this is going to be the supply line, which is the fuel coming from the Bosch 044. We got to go ahead and mount the Bosch 044 under the chassis and the fuel pump and the fuel filter, and then we can make the supply line for it. Now under the vehicle, we temporarily have a Bosch 044 fuel pump temporarily installed that uses a dash 10 coupling that goes to our 100 micron filter, which obviously you can see we have some 90s that are going to come straight over right to the bottom of our fuel cell. After the Bosch 044, we got this 90-degree fitting that's going to go straight up into the vehicle. Now we got to make sure we do this the safest way possible, so we're going to put some rubber grommets in place and then feed the nylon braided line through and then go hook it up to the supply line. To mount the Bosch 044 fuel pump, I went ahead and used the factory filler neck bolt holes, and to mount the filter, I went ahead and drilled and tapped a M6 bolt. Honestly, guys, it fits pretty perfect here. I wanted to use that bolt hole right there. It was so close, but it just didn't work out. We wanted it to be perfectly straight. So here's the fuel line with the grommet inside it. Honestly, it works pretty dang good. And we have this custom fuel line going to the surge tank. Now we got to make a couple more lines, but as you can see on the surge tank, my overflow is going straight to the fuel cell, and the supply line, which is this guy here, the center, this is going to the Bosch 044 fuel pump, which I'll show you right now. By looking at the fuel cell, we have a 90-degree fitting that we're eventually going to run a line that goes straight to here. Now this is where our pre-filter is. This is going to catch all the contaminants that's inside the fuel cell. From there we have, like I said, the coupler, then it goes to our Bosch 044 fuel pump, and then it goes up to another 90, which then feeds our surge tank up in here. Now I've been making a couple of these lines. I still got to make one more that goes from here to here. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how to make these AN lines. Some of them are easier than others, but we're not using E85, so these are not the PFTEs. These are just the regular standard AN braided lines. So let's demonstrate exactly how you make one of these lines. Now before you guys start cutting and measuring, you want to make sure whatever you are going to make your lines for, they are permanent, solid, mounted wherever you're going to mount this. For an example, the fuel filter is 100% mounted. This is where it's going to be located, 100%. The fuel cell is nice and sturdy. This is where it's going to be. So now we can get our exact measurement. Now I'm going to go ahead and spin it off real quick. Now just to demonstrate, you're going to want to measure it from this point, and then you're going to want to measure it from the next point the exact same way. As you can see, from this measurement to this measurement here, we're almost roughly at about 13 inches or so. Actually spot on, exactly at 13 inches. So after determining your length, you're going to go ahead and take your measurement. Now we got about 13 inches, so we're just going to mark it with our thumb, and then we're going to put some blue tape right in the dead center of that. So we're going to mark it right on the dot. So we're gonna leave the blue tape on while we make this cut. That way the nylon doesn't start spraying out like crazy. Now this is very controversial, however you cut this. But honestly, the bottom line is you just wanna cut it. Now, regardless if you use some pliers to cut this, which it won't come out as nice, or do you use a grinder or something like this. But obviously if you do something like this, regardless, you're gonna have to clean the line extremely well. That way no contaminants get inside your engine or your injectors. Make as straight as cut as possible. Just like that. Get an air hose and make sure to spray it out just to get all that crap out. And then you're gonna wanna flush the line with a lot of water, brake cleaner, whatever you got. Now some people like to leave the tape on. I like taking the tape off because honestly, it looks a lot better when it's fully installed. You don't want a piece of blue tape sticking out. Just be careful whenever you take the tape off that you don't start fraying out the nylon. Now you're gonna get one part of the fitting. Now you're gonna wanna try and put this in without actually fraying up all that nylon. And once you got it pressed in, you're gonna go in a counterclockwise, and you're gonna wanna push as hard as you can while twisting it, motion like this. Now, if you guys have a vise, it makes this 100% easy. You can look inside here. When the fitting's ready, you're gonna see that the inside of the hose is bottomed out on the fitting. That's what you want to see, and that says that you're 100% ready. Obviously, if the line is cockeyed whenever you cut it, it won't be perfectly flat and potentially could come off. Now I actually had one of these lines come off because I didn't do this simple process. Now I'll explain it later, but you're gonna get some blue tape and you're gonna put it right at the edge of where the fitting is and the hose. Now I'll explain what that means in just a little bit. And you're gonna wanna lube just the top part of the AN fitting. That's to make it slide in a whole lot easier. You're gonna hold on to the hose, not the fitting, and you're going to grab the hose as hard as you can while pushing this inside the hose and twisting it and pushing the threads in. Now the reason why I put this tape here, it's because just in case when you go to thread this on, if this hose starts backing out, you know that this is pushing against the hose and eventually that hose is going to come apart. So this is like a safety measure. Eventually you're going to get to a stopping point where you're going to need wrenches, and a vise works really good right now. However, we do not have a vise, we just have wrenches. Unfortunately, I do not have the nice aluminum wrenches, so my steel wrenches will kind of scar up the fitting a little bit. It kind of backed it out just a little bit, but that's what you want to see. You don't want to see no more than about 1/8 of an inch of back out. If you guys see more than that, you're going to want to redo the fitting because potentially this line will come apart if it's backed out too much. How you know this is completely finished is when the top fitting touches the bottom fitting, kind of how you see there, and there's no gap. If you can kind of line up the fitting, it just kind of makes it look just a little bit better. That's how you install a braided stainless AN line. Now we're gonna go ahead and repeat the process on this side and see if it fits. I know it looks like daytime, but it actually is pure night. So let's go ahead and wait till tomorrow in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, Arizona. So that fuel line we installed last night, well, just look. Now just because you can pretend that you know what you're doing doesn't always mean you know what you're doing. Granted, we're about 1/2 inch too long. Now we gotta fix it. Nice. That's looking way better, but there's a problem with the filter and I'm gonna go over it now. So just by looking at these 3 fuel filters, you're not gonna notice much difference besides the lettering. Now this one was our original Fuel Lab filter, which is 10 microns, and it's measured out for a -8 AN line. And we bought these off Amazon. Now believe it or not, these are almost identical as the Fuel Lab, but the Fuel Lab was 140 bucks versus this for about 30 bucks. The problem with these fuel filters is one size is extremely large, so the inlet on this is extremely big. That's exactly what we want. However, on the other side, that is so tiny. It is severely undersized. And the thing you have to remember about fuel lines and fuel plumbing is it's the exact same like a house. You don't want your sewer pipe to be huge and then have it come down to a little tiny hole. That's going to cause a restriction and it's going to reduce pressure and it's not going to flow as efficient as it should. So we're going to take off these caps on both of these fuel filters and drill them out for a -10 AN line. It's made out of aluminum, so it should be no big deal. Minimum, we got to make it at least that big. I would say that's pretty restrictive. That's much better. Now we have a sufficient flow, which is the same size as the -10 AN fitting, and this should be no problem. So honestly, you guys, the cheap fuel filters are great from Amazon, which is POY performance, but you just need to drill out the top hat here, which is no big deal. It's better than paying $140 versus 30 bucks. And see, later on, we have this 100 micron filter from Aeromotive that is literally the exact same size that we can swap in an expensive filter into a cheap filter housing. So the total price of a fuel filter like this, a 10 micron, would be about 70 bucks versus a Fuel Lab at like 140. Now we're not gonna be swapping in the 10 micron filter from Aeromotive just yet. We're actually gonna run it for a couple of miles just to get all the nasty stuff out and then swap out this filter with that Aeromotive. Looks absolutely beautiful. So now that we have the feed line coming from the surge tank to the filter, to the Bosch 044, and then the feed line going up into our panel here using a grommet. It comes out of the grommet into the surge tank. Now this is the supply line. This is what's going to fill up the surge tank 100% of fuel. Now this is what's called the overflow line. When the radium surge tank gets full of fuel, it's going to push all the fuel back into the fuel cell and just circulate it. Now we got to worry about the return line and the feed line. But for these two lines, I'm going to start in the front of the vehicle and work my way back. Unfortunately, I got to say goodbye to these beautiful custom lines. So let's go ahead and take off these lines, put in our brand new -10 AN fittings to our Magnus fuel rail. Now for the guys that are running no timing cover, what are you guys doing? Come on. I've been been underneath this car probably for about 30 minutes trying to figure out how to route these fuel lines. And I kind of found something on the driver's side here, which for the return line, I stuck this spare dash 10 AN line in between the subframe and the chassis up in here. And then it goes all the way up next to the firewall. And then on this side, I found this little access hole that's right near the steering rack. Now that's going to be our feed line. I kind of want to tuck in this fuel line just a little bit more inside here, just because it's a little bit close to the T case, and that's a bad thing. I went ahead and put some fuel line near the area that the fuel hose is going to go to. Now, it's not really going to make too much contact with it, but that's just in case. You guys, if you got any other better ideas on how to get a dash 10 AN fuel line going into the engine bay without routing it near anything that like spins or even might explode. Pretty good. I like that return line coming off the Magnus fuel rail into the fuel lab filter. And then we have a straight AN line going straight down into the abyss down there. Also, I think I ran out of a 90-degree fitting. I got all these fittings, but no 90s. Go figure. We covered it just in time. Thank God, because dude, this rain, it came out of nowhere. Sun's out and it's a whole lot better today. Also, Supra's outside, so we got some room finally. Can you tell how much of a better mood I'm in after I get some sleep, after I've been cranking on this thing for probably 4 or 5 days now, non-stop for like 8 hours a day, and we haven't accomplished nothing. Well, I can't say nothing. I mean, we got majority of all the fittings gone and everything off this bench is gone, but it's a lot bigger of a mess now. Also, with the new tarp on the GSX outside, dude, it's doing a pretty good job. Look at all that water. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, and just so you guys know, whenever you're assembling a fuel line or a complete fuel system, obviously everything gets mocked up first, then everything gets disassembled, so we are gonna have to disassemble everything, and then everything gets cleaned. Trust me when I said I got stuff done today. Well, okay, I just kind of looked at it and I kind of just, yeah. Tomorrow. Welcome back to another successful day. Unfortunately, today's going to be all about procrastination because we're actually missing a fitting for the car, and unfortunately, the fuel line, I can't secure it yet. I'm literally waiting on the post office guy right now to send us some parts to finish our race car, but unfortunately he ain't gonna be here today. So what that means is this video is probably over. So on that beautiful bombshell, on the next video we're gonna be doing a full complete install of the wiring. Now I'm gonna be going over the wiring from the battery all the way back to the surge tank, how to wire up 4 fuel pumps with a hop switch with 4 different relays, ground, power supplies, all that good stuff, and we can do final startup. Sorry to keep you guys waiting for so long, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.